For years, the world inside the bold and the beautiful had survived on illusion. Beautiful offices hid ugly betrayals. Family dinners concealed silent wars. Every smile in the halls of Forrester Creations carried calculation behind it, and every declaration about loyalty, legacy, and love was usually tied to power. But even in a world built on emotional warfare, there are moments that shatter the balance completely, moments when the carefully maintained facade finally cracks open and exposes everything festering underneath. This was one of those moments. The confrontation began not with screaming, but with silence. A heavy, unbearable silence settled inside Ridge's office as Hope Logan Spencer stood across from him with tears burning in her eyes and years of humiliation hardening her voice. The room that had once symbolized prestige and family legacy suddenly felt suffocating, almost courtroom-like, as though judgment itself had entered the building. Ridge Forrester immediately sensed something different about Hope the moment she walked in. This was not the soft-spoken young woman who once bent over backward to preserve peace inside the family. This was not the endlessly patient daughter who spent years swallowing insults in the name of unity. The woman standing before him now looked exhausted, not physically, but spiritually. There was a dangerous clarity in her expression, the kind born only after someone has finally reached the absolute limit of what they can endure. And beside her stood Logan Forrester, equally shaken, equally conflicted, but unable to pull her daughter back this time. Because deep down, Brooke knew Hope was right. Hope did not begin with accusations. In fact, that made the scene even more devastating. Her voice trembled at first, not from weakness, but from the emotional weight of everything she had kept buried for too long. She spoke slowly, deliberately, forcing Ridge to hear every word. She reminded him of the promises Forrester Creations once claimed to represent: creativity, opportunity, family, respect. She spoke about the years she dedicated to hope for the future, about the countless nights she sacrificed herself to prove she deserved her place inside a company that never fully accepted her. She spoke about being treated like an outsider in a business she helped elevate, about being tolerated instead of valued. Then came the shift. The pain in her voice slowly transformed into anger. Not explosive anger. Not uncontrolled rage. Worse than that, it became precise. Hope looked directly into Ridge's eyes and finally said the thing no one else inside the company had been brave enough to say aloud. Steffi had become a tyrant, and Ridge was responsible for creating her. The words hit like broken glass. For a moment, Ridge genuinely could not speak. He had spent years defending Steffi Forrester Finnegan, excusing her behavior as passion, leadership, strength, or instinct. Every ruthless decision had been justified under the banner of protecting the company. Every cruel act had been reframed as necessary business strategy. But hearing Hope describe Steffi not as difficult, not as controlling, but as a monster forced Ridge to confront something he had spent years refusing to acknowledge. Maybe the problem was no longer Steffi's behavior. Maybe the problem was the environment that allowed it. Hope's tears finally spilled over, but they did not weaken her argument. If anything, they intensified it. Her pain made the truth impossible to dismiss as manipulation or dramatics. She told Ridge that Steffi's repeated suspensions of hope for the future were not business decisions. They were targeted acts of personal retaliation. She accused Steffi of deliberately undermining her career, sabotaging her contracts, and using her position as CEO to erase anyone she perceived as a threat. And then came the accusation that changed everything. Hope declared that Forrester Creations had not only violated her employment agreement, but had also profited from designs and concepts connected to her line while stripping her of authority and access. According to Hope, the company had continued leveraging her brand recognition while simultaneously destroying her position within the company itself. It was no longer just emotional. It was legal. The room suddenly felt colder. Brooke visibly froze beside her daughter because she understood immediately what Hope was really saying. This was no longer a family conflict that could be solved over dinner or through emotional apologies. Hope was preparing for war. And then she delivered the ultimatum. Either Ridge removed Steffi as CEO immediately, or Hope and Brooke would file a lawsuit against Forrester Creations. Not tomorrow. Not eventually.
Now.
The words seemed to suck the air out of the office. Ridge stared at Hope in disbelief, as though he no longer recognized the young woman standing before him. But the truth was far more painful than that. He recognized her perfectly. For the first time in years, Hope Logan had inherited the most dangerous trait of the Logan women, the willingness to stop begging for dignity and start demanding it. That realization terrified him, because Ridge knew Hope was not bluffing. There was something irreversible in her tone. Years of disappointment had burned away her hesitation. The woman who once avoided confrontation at all costs was now willing to destroy the illusion of family peace, if that was what justice required. Brooke tried to intervene at first. She reached for Hope gently, whispering her name, trying to soften the moment before it became catastrophic. But Hope pulled away, not cruelly, but firmly. That subtle movement shattered Brooke's heart more than shouting ever could. Because Brooke suddenly realized something devastating. Her daughter was prepared to sacrifice even her relationship with Ridge, if necessary. Hope turned toward her mother with tears streaming down her face and quietly said that they had spent too many years letting the Forresters dictate the rules. Too many years accepting humiliation in exchange for temporary peace. Too many years pretending that family loyalty mattered more than self-respect. Her voice cracked as she admitted how much she loved Brooke, how much she knew this would hurt her, but she could not continue sacrificing herself just to preserve a marriage that never protected them when it mattered most. Brooke looked absolutely shattered. The conflict inside her was unbearable. She loved Ridge deeply. Despite every betrayal, every separation, every heartbreak, some part of Brooke had always found her way back to him. But standing beside Hope now, seeing the pain in her daughter's eyes, she could no longer ignore the truth she had spent years rationalizing away. Ridge always protected Steffi first. Always. No matter how unfair the situation became. No matter who got hurt. And perhaps the cruelest part was that Ridge himself did not even fully realize he was doing it. That was the tragedy of this family. The favoritism had become so deeply ingrained that it no longer even looked like favoritism to the people perpetuating it. Ridge finally tried to speak, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. He insisted that firing Steffi would destroy the company. He argued that she had carried Forrester through difficult years, that her leadership had stabilized the brand, that removing her now would create chaos. But even as he spoke, his arguments sounded hollow, because none of them addressed the real issue. Hope did not care about quarterly profits in that moment. In the glittering and endlessly volatile world of the bold and the beautiful, family has always been both sanctuary and battlefield. The Logan women, in particular, built their identities around an almost sacred belief that no matter how brutal the wars outside became, they would always protect one another inside the walls of their own family. They survived heartbreak, betrayal, humiliation, and decades of emotional warfare against the Forresters because they believed unity was their greatest strength. Even when they fought among themselves, there was always an invisible thread pulling them back together. Love, loyalty, survival, those things defined the Logan women more than any fashion empire ever could. But power changes people. Not always suddenly. Not always loudly. Sometimes it happens quietly, one compromise at a time, until a person no longer recognizes the reflection staring back at them. And somewhere along the way, Hope Logan Spencer began changing in ways that frightened even the people who loved her most. At first, no one wanted to admit it. After everything Hope endured at Forrester Creations, everyone understood her anger. They understood the humiliation of watching her line repeatedly sidelined while Steffi Forrester Finnegan tightened her control over the company, like a ruler protecting a throne. They understood why Hope no longer trusted promises about fairness or teamwork. Every delay, every dismissal, every passive-aggressive remark disguised as business strategy had slowly carved away pieces of the optimistic woman Hope used to be. So when Katie Logan Spencer invited Hope to become more involved in the rapidly growing Logan fashion house, it initially felt empowering. Symbolic, even. A fresh start. A chance for Hope to finally build something free from Forrester politics and Steffi's constant shadow. For the first time in years, Hope seemed energized again. Not happy exactly, but driven. There was intensity in her now. Sharpness. Focus. And at first, Katie admired it. Katie herself had spent years living under the emotional weight of stronger personalities. Brooke's beauty, Bill's dominance. The overwhelming presence of the Forrester dynasty. Building Logan into something meaningful had awakened a fierce determination inside her, and seeing Hope share that determination felt comforting. Hope understood the stakes. She understood the humiliation of constantly being underestimated. Together, they started dreaming bigger. Too big, perhaps. The atmosphere inside Logan slowly transformed from hopeful creativity into something more aggressive. Meetings became strategy sessions. Conversations about design evolved into conversations about market warfare. The language itself changed. They stopped talking about success and started talking about conquest. And that was when Donna Logan began to worry. Donna noticed the shift before anyone else because Donna had always paid attention to emotional details others ignored. She saw the way Hope's tone hardened whenever Steffi's name came up. She noticed how Katie increasingly deferred to Hope's instincts instead of questioning them. Most disturbingly, she sensed something cold developing beneath Hope's passion, a willingness to hurt people if necessary. Donna tried to ignore her instincts at first. She wanted to believe Hope was simply protecting herself after years of mistreatment. But the deeper Hope became involved at Logan, the more Donna felt their family dynamic beginning to fracture under invisible pressure. One evening, while reviewing sketches and financial projections inside the Logan office, Donna finally voiced what had been haunting her for weeks. She told Katie that bringing Hope fully into the company might be dangerous, not professionally, but emotionally. The rivalry with Forrester was already becoming deeply personal, and Hope was carrying too much unresolved anger. Donna feared the company was no longer about creativity or independence. It was becoming a vehicle for revenge. Katie immediately bristled at the criticism. To Katie, Donna's concerns sounded naive, weak, fearful. Hope, however, remained eerily calm. That calmness unsettled Donna more than anger would have. Hope listened carefully, nodding softly while Donna spoke about family unity and emotional consequences. She even smiled faintly, as though appreciating Donna's concern. But behind her eyes, something colder was calculating, because Hope had already started viewing emotional hesitation as a threat. She had spent too many years watching people like Steffi weaponize confidence while the Logans tried to preserve peace. In Hope's mind, weakness was exactly what allowed the Forresters to dominate for so long. Every compromise, every attempt to avoid conflict, every emotional surrender disguised as maturity. Hope no longer wanted to survive. She wanted to win, and winning required sacrifice. Later that night, after Donna left, Hope carefully approached Katie again. The conversation that followed would quietly change the entire emotional structure of the Logan family. Hope did not attack Donna directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she framed Donna's fears as limitations. She gently suggested that Donna was afraid of growth because growth meant conflict. She argued that Donna's instinct to preserve harmony was admirable emotionally, but disastrous strategically. She reminded Katie that companies did not survive by prioritizing feelings over ambition. The manipulation was subtle because Hope herself partially believed it. That was what made it so dangerous. Hope spoke passionately about opportunity, legacy, independence, and finally escaping Forrester control. She reminded Katie how often powerful people dismissed them precisely because the Logan women were expected to remain emotional caretakers rather than leaders. Then Hope delivered the argument that finally pierced Katie's defenses. She said Donna was asking them to stay small so the family could stay comfortable. The sentence lingered in the room like poison. Katie tried resisting it at first. Donna loved them. Donna only wanted peace. But once Hope planted the idea, Katie could not stop thinking about it. Every concern Donna expressed suddenly sounded less like wisdom and more like fear. And Hope quietly encouraged that interpretation. Not openly, never openly. That was another disturbing change inside her. Hope had learned from her enemies. She no longer confronted power emotionally. She redirected perceptions. She shaped narratives carefully, patiently, strategically. Exactly the way Steffi would have. The irony was horrifying. Days later, the tension finally exploded. Donna walked into the Logan office expecting another ordinary family meeting, only to find Katie unusually defensive before the conversation even began. Hope remained nearby, reviewing sketches with almost theatrical detachment while the sisters began arguing. At first, the disagreement centered on business strategy. Donna insisted the company was moving too aggressively, too emotionally. Katie accused her of lacking faith in their vision. Donna tried explaining that her concern had nothing to do with ambition itself. It was about what ambition was turning them into. But the argument rapidly became personal. Years of buried insecurities surfaced with shocking speed. Katie accused Donna of always avoiding difficult choices. Donna countered that Katie was becoming obsessed with proving herself. Katie snapped that at least she was finally fighting for something instead of hiding.